Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We are going to get started in just a minute or so as people come into the room. We are so happy to have everyone here today and can't wait for today's learning. So we'll get started in just a few seconds. Okay, let's begin. So good afternoon. Welcome to the Indiana Youth Institute's webinar, AI in Action, Practical Tools for Career Exploration and STEM Pathways. My name is Nathan Four. I serve as the Program Officer for IYI's College and Career Initiatives. We're really glad to have everyone with us today. It's an honor to connect with everyone as you continue to put yourself forward for the Indiana youth in our state. For those who are not familiar with IYI, our mission is to improve the lives of all Indiana children by strengthening and connecting the people, organizations, and communities that are focused on youth. Ultimately, our goal is to be here for you, the youth workers who are on the front lines working with youth across the state. Before we begin, I'd like to share a few pointers that will help you engage in today's webinar. For any technical support issues, use the chat feature to send a message to Tanner Pickett, IYI's College and Career Program Manager. He is behind the scenes to assist you. Use this feature to converse with the group as well. We will send out a PDF of all the slides to all participants after today's webinar. We also encourage you to ask questions, so please use the Q&A feature for any you may have, and we will get to as many as possible today. Later today, you will receive an email with a link to complete the evaluation for this webinar. Please take a few minutes to let us know what you thought about today's presentation. If you do not receive the evaluation email, please check your junk email as it may have been directed there. Once you complete that evaluation, you'll be redirected to your certificate of participation. Like all IYI webinars, today's webinar will be posted on our website if you'd like to revisit a portion for review again or to share the opportunity to listen with your partners. Today, we're excited to be joined by Michael Stone. Michael Stone is an experienced educator and national leader in instructional technology integration, currently serving as Director of Innovative Learning for the Public Education Foundation in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and the co-founder of DevXPD. With his deep experience in instructional technology and leading innovative initiatives, Michael Stone brings practical and forward-thinking perspective on how AI can transform career exploration for students and make career pathways more personalized, actionable, and impactful. We're really excited today for today's presentation, so let's get started.
Thank you, Nathan, and very excited to be here working with you all in Indiana. I've had quite a bit of experience with educators in and around the sort of greater Bloomington area in the last 6 or 7 years, and I'm just super excited about the new diploma pathways and the graduation pathways that Indiana is embracing to create more connection between what students do in school and what is actually desirable and needed in the workforce. Come to this work as a career educator. I've not, my expertise is not in like college and career coaching, but the last 4 or 5 years, I've spent a lot of time providing sort of consulting services around helping different organizations, both inside and outside of education, for-profit, nonprofit, and certainly in the sort of formal and informal education settings. Really start to think about how do you leverage the potential of artificial intelligence? How do you integrate AI into workflows and really take advantage of this potentially transformational technology? So I'm going to jump into the presentation. Got a handful of slides to go through, and then on the back end, we'll do a couple of live demonstrations with some specific use cases. And the goal is to keep a fair amount of time on the back end for Q&A, and be happy to do the best we can to address questions that come up. Though it wouldn't shock me if you ask some questions I just don't know the answer to, but happy to explore that as it happens. So I'm going to share my screen here and get the slides up and running. Hopefully you can see those okay. So as we're looking at AI in action, we're looking to sort of lean into what is actually possible from a productivity and impact standpoint with artificial intelligence, as opposed to just sort of kind of theoretical or cursory or shallow experiences with AI that we've observed over the years happening really across kind of all industries. There seems to be some consensus that this is a transformational and potentially revolutionary technology, but also there's a lot of questions about how do you actually leverage it for transformation and big impact. So I want to just upfront share a handful of assumptions that I bring to the table today, having done a lot of this work with educators in formal and informal settings through the years. First is this. I assume that most of us have used AI, but we feel like it is capable of more than what we actually understand. That many of us, if you're choosing to sign up for an AI in education or AI in action workshop, you probably have some experience with it, but typically folks that have used it a little recognize we've just seen the tip of the iceberg. It also is probably true that some people in the webinar today have very limited experience with AI. That's just like Facebook and Instagram trends, or maybe you've done a handful of email rewrites. I know when ChatGPT sort of first hit the consumer market back in 2022, I was enamored that I could write a cute poem to my spouse. I'm not sure I'd ever written her poem previously, and after the like seventh or eighth one, she kind of had enough of what GPT could help me create in terms of poetry. So some of us may have had just experience with these sort of like cursory, fun, semi-silly experiences. I also assume some, maybe many of us, are scared of what AI might do. We've recognized it's powerful, but it's also there's not a lot of clarity around it. And so there may be some fear around what the potential impact and implications are of adopting artificial intelligence and how fast it's evolving, and how it might be used by bad actors or used unintentionally by good actors. So there's oftentimes some fear or trepidation around the potential with AI. I also assume many folks bring some environmental and or ethical or developmental concerns around AI. There are a lot of questions. There are a lot of important conversations that we need to have as society, as a culture, as a country, as community members, as educators, as leaders around what we're doing with this technology. What are the regulations that should be around it? Do we stifle innovation by over-regulating it? But do we sacrifice environmental impact or ethical concerns because we're trying to stay ahead of a global adversary? There's a lot of conversation to be had in this space. It's not the scope for this webinar, but as we talk about AI, I have a tendency to fanboy about emerging technology, and I want to be cautious to just acknowledge there are some very real concerns here. I will say on the environmental impact, it's important to stay very aware if that's a particular concern for you. I'd encourage you to do very real and very current research around the emerging sort of environmental impacts and trends. I was just reading a report yesterday regarding a farmer in Utah. He runs an alfalfa farm, and he's decided to take a significant portion of his acreage and dedicate it to building a large data center. And his rationale, it probably is financial. He'll probably make more money. But the rationale he was expressing in the report was that the data center, the AI data center that he'll be using for foundational models there, will actually use 75% less water than that portion of acreage on his farm was using for supporting his alfalfa crop, which, as I understand, is a pretty thirsty crop. But nonetheless, there's a lot of misinformation out there about environmental impact. But there is still very real environmental impact in this sort of ecosystem that we need to be conscientious of. A couple other assumptions. I also assume if you're on this webinar that the number of folks that are participating, number of folks that will see this, there's probably this huge range, this sort of large spectrum. Some are probably on one end where you're going, man, I hate AI. I don't want to use it. I'm not particularly interested in this technology, but my boss told me I had to, or my cousin that won't stop talking about it just keeps pestering me about it, so I've got to learn more. Or on the far other end, you may be an active user. You've got some agent orchestration going on already. Maybe your agent's attending this webinar on your behalf and just going to send you an update to your phone over iMessage or whatever when the webinar is over. So I assume there's a pretty significant range of sort of beginner to moderate expert that's participating here with us. We're going to do our best to try to catch everyone up and provide some value for all of us. I also assume that you may have some questions around, will there even be careers left for our kids to explore? this is not trivial, but it's an important conversation. I tend to believe as innovation, particularly technology innovation, that's significant and transformational comes along. There's sometimes is a disruptive sort of season where it does impact jobs, where people do lose jobs that are associated with their livelihood. But typically, it over time creates more jobs than it disrupts. So there's some conversation to be had here. We don't. I'm not going to go too deep on this, but I do think it's important to acknowledge this is a real concern for people. Um, and I think many of you have probably had someone in your life that has come along. Maybe it's a supervisor at your work, at your profession, just came to you and said, "Why don't you just use AI to make it better? Do it faster. Let AI do it for you. Your job is easy now." And that may be the case. So we have some real concerns. We have some real questions. I think there's sort of all of this in the ether. I won't speak to much of this beyond these slides in this presentation, but I think it's important to acknowledge that we're playing with a technology that is both incredibly powerful for good, but can be incredibly powerful for some things that are unknowns that could be for not good. And it's important that we're mindful of that and just sort of frame the rest of the how do we get the most good out of this technology through a lens of acknowledging that there are some things out there that we should really be thoughtful of and I think be informed about and bring educator, bring youth worker voice to as we consider how we integrate AI into student experience, into coaching and career path experiences. I also, I'll end with this assumption. I assume that if you're signing up for this webinar, if you're dedicated to youth work, I'm assuming there's some missional component that drew you into this field, and that missional component sort of is rooted in this idea that we're committed to helping students, to helping youth, and that commitment sort of pushes us maybe beyond our comfort zone to be willing to consider new tools that might enhance our impact, even if we're not super comfortable or super early adopters with some of those with some of these tools. So, having said that, I'm going to ask you, just assuming some of you have used some AI, ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Claude Code, or some other version that's not a chatbot. I'm just going to ask a simple, straight up question. I'd like for you to respond in the chat. We'll give you like 45 seconds to a minute. You don't have to be long, but just bullets are fine. The question is this: how have you used AI to support students or youth in career explorations? Take a moment. I'll try to monitor the chat here while we're going. And Nathan and Tanner will help us out, but we'd love for you to respond. What are some ways you've used AI to support students in career explorations? Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate the vulnerability to say that. Oh, that's fascinating. Betsy, I love that idea of like, I just regularly have students talk about, or they'll take a career inventory that identifies a particular career pathway that I am just unfamiliar with, that I just don't understand the details of. So having an AI assistant help me come up with some things that help both fill in my own personal gaps and come up with some lessons and some interactive experiences for students, it's incredibly helpful. Student-run businesses and entrepreneurship, and yeah, brainstorming and pushing them through. It's awesome. Okay, feel free to keep throwing those in there. That's sort of what I figured, was that people that show up for this kind of thing, oftentimes you got some cool stuff happening already. So this is awesome. Thank you for sharing those. If you have other ideas, please continue to put those in the chat. So just to sort of bring everybody up to speed, going to give you a couple, 3 slides here to get us all at a similar baseline. The first is this. I want to address this idea, kind of what is AI when we're talking about AI. This could be an entire college course. I'm going to just distill it down to one single slide to say today for this webinar, when we're talking about AI, we're really talking about generative AI, and specifically generative AI through essentially chatbot modalities, typically associated with large language models. And on the back end, we'll talk a little bit about some emerging work around agent orchestration and AI agents that we can use to enhance our workflows and do some automated work. But to not have, like, to make it easier to roll off the tongue, I'm just going to call it AI, but I do want to acknowledge that we're talking about the specific sort of subdomain of generative AI. So when we talk about things like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or Copilot or Kimi or many of these sort of large language model chatbots, what we're talking about typically are artificial intelligence models that essentially analyze patterns and data. And then based on that analysis, they're able to create new content. Many times this feels like we're using a search engine that's just finding information at a cursory level. But what is actually happening is this idea that we can create completely new original content based on sort of machine learning or algorithmic learning of patterns from extraordinarily large data sets. So the AI we're using today is, yes, incredibly smart, which is a fuzzy word to use in this space, but it's smart on basically mathematical analysis of text. Now, I'm way oversimplifying an extraordinarily complex field, but for the sake of what we'll do today, when we talk about AI, this is basically the lane we're going to be playing in. Now, through observations with teachers, working with professionals across multiple industries over the last few years, come to discover that people have had varying degrees of success working with AI. Some have used it and found it to be extraordinarily helpful. Others have used it to find it kind of a waste of time. And many times in that waste of time lane, what we tend to see is that we find users who are navigating this idea of, like, it's called AI slop. And it's basically this concept that AI, when given a general prompt, it can only produce content as good as the context and constraints you provide. So you can see on the side here an example. This is from ChatGPT, a previous version than what was the 5.5 that was just released recently. But here, there's a prompt that just says simply, draft a social media post announcing a new partnership between a Cleveland area food bank and a local grocery chain. Well, just that prompt is missing a lot of context, a lot of nuance. And so what we see is people will get the result, and the result is fine. It's not wrong. It's not like misinformation. There's not a lot of hallucination or just made up information there. But it is not particularly useful either. It's not compelling copy. It doesn't get into the details. It's missing a sort of human flavor and tone. So what we sort of coach folks on is that if you want to avoid slop, you really want to lean into this idea of, like, nuanced responses. And the way you do that is you have to provide detailed context. That detailed context can be, as you can see scrolling, extraordinarily long, almost a brain dump kind of rambling prompt that lays out lots and lots of detail. You can also, in most platforms now, attach documents and images and sort of a body of content. Sometimes these range from, like, PDFs to markdown files to spreadsheets, et cetera. But it's this idea that you can sort of drop in significant amount of context and constraint. And when you do, the response becomes much more nuanced, much more sort of tailored to your audience, much more in a sort of human voice. So sort of step one, when we're trying to get a lot of value out of AI, is to really be mindful and thoughtful about how we're crafting our prompts, making sure we're providing the level of detail that's necessary to garner the type of nuanced responses that we often actually play with in reality. Though in reality, we don't typically think about sharing quite as much nuanced detail on the front end. So there's a little bit of that, developing that muscle or that instinct as a user. Next step in this is sort of, as we get better at prompting, we want to start thinking about using AI in this sort of progressive nature. So where we see most folks using generative AI or chatbots currently tends to fall in this sort of delegator bucket. Well, it's not a bad use. It's a great use. This is not progressive, meaning like beginner is delegator and advanced is creator. But we see a lot of people sort of stop at the delegator bucket. So they'll ask AI to do things like, hey, I've given you a whole bunch of documents here for me. I need you to summarize those documents. Give me 10 bullets so I can better understand this. What was provided for me in a very long PDF or collection of documents. Or we'll ask it to write an email on our behalf and keep it professional, or take my rambling bullets and put it into a professional email. something like that. It's very discrete task oriented, where there's a clear, nuanced outcome that we're prompting toward, with the intent to have it sort of share a specific resource on our behalf or create a specific resource on our behalf. The next two buckets, we're going to spend a fair amount of time today in the collaborator bucket, and on the back end, we'll talk a little bit about this creator concept. The collaborator moves from these discrete tasks to more of a thought partnership. It's using AI to say, hey, I'm working toward a particular goal, and I need you to challenge my thinking. I need you to help me move from what we've always done to sort of illuminate new ways that we might be thinking about this. Oftentimes, for me, this will look like I'll use the voice feature in a particular chatbot, maybe when I'm driving, and I'll say, okay, here's a decision that we have coming up. I'm working on this presentation, or I'm navigating hiring a new team member, and here are three things I'm really wrestling with. And I'll just sort of brain dump and ramble for a while to the chatbot, and then say, I need you to help me synthesize my thoughts. What are 3 or 4 things I should definitely be thinking about? What are blind spots that I may not be considering based on what I've taught you about? But it's this idea that we can start to almost humanize the experience and treat the AI as a collaborative partner as opposed to a discrete task sort of delegator. And then the final bucket, we're seeing a lot of sort of movement toward, and in 2026, this is really the emerging sort of future of AI space, is this idea of designing agents or orchestrating agents, which are basically automated AI bots. So we're going to move away from the conversation sort of interaction, where it's just I prompt AI, it responds, I respond back, and we have this sort of dialogue. But we start to move into this concept of, I might start thinking about in a small business setting, creating a chief of staff that I can't otherwise hire. And that chief of staff might be an AI agent that's orchestrating multiple sub agents that are very task specific. So a sub agent might be something that keeps track of emerging policy changes, another sub agent that keeps track and provides updates on student interactions. So there's a number of ways that we can start getting into workflow automation. And the idea there is not to say, well, I'd like to do that instead of having humans participating or humans in the loop. But the real sort of core of this is that if we can automate some of our repetitive workflows, it can buy us time to do those things, particularly in this field, that are uniquely human, to build relationships with the youth that we serve, to sort of sense that, no matter how sophisticated AI gets, it's probably never going to be to the point where it can sense when, a young student walks into our office, walks into our classroom, and has just had a bad day. And before they're ready to do meaningful work, needs someone to connect with them on a human level and just sort of bring them in and help them feel seen. So the idea here is about leveraging AI to increase our sort of efficiency so that we can buy time back to lean into those things that are uniquely human. In that process, last couple of slides before we jump into some demos work here. In that process, what we encourage, particularly with adults and with students, is redirecting the process from this sort of do things on my behalf necessarily to help me do things in a way that was otherwise not possible. So, for example, we hear a lot in the education space of students who are basically using AI to cheat, write this paper for me. Well, that's not a good or ethical use of AI. It's robbing students of the experience of writing, the value of writing, where it forces the process of writing forces us to decompose complex ideas into manageable sort of bite-sized chunks and wrestle with those chunks and articulate them in a way that are meaningful for another reader. There's a lot of brain development that happens in the process of writing, not just writing for the sake of it. If we let AI do that for us, we're missing out on that experience. If we let AI do that for our students, we're robbing them of that experience. That certainly has developmental impact in a very negative way. What we can do is move into this idea of, hey, here's what I'm thinking. I need you to help me brainstorm. This is what I'm working on, a creative writing piece, but I'm really struggling. I can only think of 3 settings. Could you give me 10 more ideas for settings that would make sense for this context? Or here's a piece I've written. Could you help me refine my writing? What might a reader actually pick up here? I think I'm communicating X. Is a reader going to be sort of interpreting Y, and how could I refine what it is that I'm doing in that way? So you can sort of see the idea here is to sort of shift from just, hey, do this thing, this task for me, and great, now I don't have to pay attention, to help me do the task better. Right? Help me develop more like higher quality work and insights from whatever the task is that I'm trying to complete. So in a webinar, this will be interesting. I've not done this remotely before, but I'm going to try the next piece here is to give a couple of simple starting points. I'm going to, you're welcome to, I can't see your screens, so you're welcome to do whatever makes the most sense for you. I'm going to shift what I'm sharing so that you can see what I'm doing in real time, but I would encourage you, feel free to, if many of you are active users of AI already, feel free to go to your AI chatbot of choice. This will work the same whether you're in any of the sort of major chatbots. They give you a prompt and ask you to either follow along with me or try it yourself. We're going to act like we're students, and this is where we're going to go. We're going to start on the left here and just sort of help it, using AI to help me discover me. So we're going to ask it to interview us by asking one question at a time to learn as much as it can about our interests and skills until it has enough to inform enough information to suggest 3 career paths that I, the user, should be learning about. So bear with me. I'm going to switch how my screen is sharing for just a moment here. And oops. And I'll also paste this into the chat so you can copy and paste that prompt if you'd like. Oops. There we go. And so this is ChatGPT. And I'm just going to come in and say, hey, because this is my personal GPT account, it knows a lot about me. I've spent a lot of time building memory of who I am. So I'm going to tell it for a demo, act like I'm an 11th grade high school student who you know nothing about. Interview me by asking me one question at a time. Learn as much about my interests and skills until you're ready to suggest 3 career paths I should start learning more about. So I'll hit go. And this idea of asking AI to interview us, I think, is a powerful starting point. It's a really nice way to move beyond just, hey, can you help me complete a task? And really moving into this idea of like, how can I collaborate effectively with AI? So here's our first question. What's something you genuinely enjoy doing so much that you lose track of time while doing it? Sort of getting into this idea of like state of flow. It could be inside of school, outside of school, online, whatever. So I'm just going to throw in here, I'll say I really like creating things, especially videos and graphics for social media. Remember, we asked it to give us sort of one question at a time. Okay, that's a strong clue already. Next question. When you make videos or graphics, which part do you enjoy most? Okay. I'll say editing, designing visuals, and learning the tech tools. And I won't make you sit and watch an entire thing that's going on here, but we'll do another question or two and then tell it, hey, that's enough. Go ahead and point me in a direction. Let's see. A combination usually points to somebody who enjoys creativity and systems. Next question. What kinds of content do you enjoy most, enjoy creating or watching? I'll just say I enjoy doing like tutorials. I enjoy about cars and gaming. Easiest and least draining things in school, even if you don't love school overall. I actually like school. And I have a 3.4 GPA. Thank you very much. Let's see. What feels least draining? I enjoy really enjoy my foreign language classes. PE and history. So I throw it a little curveball. It's starting out, it looks like I'm like sort of STEMmy. And then all of a sudden I'm into some humanities type work. It says, okay, here's some interest. Do you prefer working mostly alone, small team? Let's say a small team. I'll say, hey, go ahead with what you know about me now and give me some starting suggestions on career paths I should explore. So as it starts to learn a little bit about me, you sort of understand, I'll unpack the back end here. What it's doing is starting to paint a picture internally about what do I like to do? Who am I? What are my interests? Where are places? It's going to eventually start asking me things about what are my like my aptitudes? What are things I'm naturally good at? And as it asks me, this sort of make believe student, these questions, it's starting to discover, okay, what are those things? And I love this. Didn't know it would say this exactly, but I want to steer you to career paths that sit at the intersection of, and it's starting to sort of build this profile on what does that Venn diagram look like, where those things overlap. What are some pathways that this might look like? And so we can see it starts to lay out some generalized pieces, and that's all. That's awesome. So we can scroll through there. We can see it gets into some UI UX design. It's tapping into some of the creativity and creative elements of the original initial responses I gave it. Starts talking about technical content creation and what are pathways for that. What you may notice here is this is still sort of vague. This isn't painting a clear picture. It's not treating me like a young person in Indiana. It's not aware of the new seals or diploma. It's missing some nuance. So I have a couple of options. I can stay in this platform and continue to just bombard it with content. I could sort of tell it, hey, reference all of Indiana's workforce readiness and education pathways. Be mindful of non-traditional academic pathways, and help me think about, as a student who lives in Bloomington, what are some next steps I could take? And it's going to increasingly do a better and better job of getting targeted and specific as I provide that content. At this point, it doesn't know I'm referencing a particular state or any particular pathways that may be available in a given community. So back to the sort of front end, that idea of the amount of nuanced content and detail that I can build in for it, it basically starts building guardrails and tailors the conversation from this broad and generalized feedback, which is well and good, but not necessarily actionable, to very, very tailored, very focused feedback. The other option I have, and I'll bear with me out here, I'm going to change my screen setup one more time. The other option I have is to jump into something like, I noticed a few of you mentioned Notebook LM. So anytime I'm dealing with a discrete data set, or there's a collection of data that I could reference, or information that I could reference, Notebook LM from Google provides a really powerful resource. So Notebook LM is totally free as long as you have a Google account. It's not based on any sort of paid service or anything like that. The basic idea is you create collections of resources. I believe now they've just expanded to, you can put up to 100 resources in a notebook. And so I'm going to go in, I've pre-built a notebook and just give you a sense of what this can look like. So I'm going to come into this Indiana Career Explorations notebook, and you'll see along the left side, I'll just expand this a little here. There's a number of PDFs that have just been dropped into this notebook. So some information around the new diploma, around high school course titles and descriptions, sort of thinking from like a college and career exploration standpoint. I'll talk about this profile. This is just a made up student profile we'll use in a moment. And then it gets into like the IYI data book from 2026, some employment outlooks, and some stuff out of the Chamber of Commerce there in Indiana, talks about the honor seals. So it's basically this collection of content. And what Notebook LM does is essentially allows us to have curated conversations based entirely just on the content available in those resources. So I don't want to gatekeep this. I want to make sure this is very attainable. To add these, I'm just going to click Add Sources, and I can drop in. You can see PDFs, images, docs, audio files. You can grab YouTube links. You can literally just search the internet for information. So if I had another student profile I wanted to put in, I literally just drop it in a matter of seconds. It analyzes that, and it starts to provide us this tailored chat experience where we can do this. So in here, I have one of the documents you see in here is this Avery Patel's profile. This is completely fabricated, not a real student. I want to let you see what's in that. So this is just a simple, short one-page profile on this 11th grade student. You can see Avery's GPA, a little bit of summary about the student, some information from their career assessment that they did. Maybe this was with Major Clarity or Zello or whatever career assessment tools you may have access to for your students. So we just built a little profile. Obviously, ideally, this would be a 30-page profile with lots and lots of insight and analysis about the student. Maybe we have their transcript as well. Having all of that would make this even better. But even with just that, I'm just going to paste a simple prompt into the chat window here and have a quick discussion with, this is powered by Google Gemini, with this chatbot about Avery. So it's reading about her, it's considering all of the content that's in here, and now it's going to start to build this profile. And what you're going to find it's going to put in here is to be much more tailored, much more focused, because it's referencing all of this context of these documents we uploaded into this notebook. It's going to build a very, very tailored, very sort of Indiana specific pathway for her that's based on the information that's available in this notebook. So you see it's referencing the enrollment honors plus seals, the employment honor plus seal. It starts talking about some of the value of what she would benefit in terms of how she could gain automatic acceptance to Indiana's public colleges and universities. It breaks down the sort of roadmap into 3 phases, talking about selecting a readiness seal and how she might go about filtering and thinking about what's the right readiness seal for her. The idea here would be is as sort of youth support workers in formal or informal learning spaces, this provides a really compelling pathway to new conversations, right? To more informed conversations. So yes, could the student do this on their own and go, great, I've got this 4-phase plan, I can run with this. Yes, and you'll notice it almost always is going to end with a question, would you like for me to create a detailed list of work-based learning host sites in Indiana that specialize in UX design? And Avery might come in and say, well, actually, I live in Indianapolis, so I want to tailor it just specific to Indianapolis, not just Indiana as a state. I want to get into my community. Those are all possibilities. So you can continue this dialogue. Where we get really excited is watching hearing adults blend this powerful tool with their interaction with students. So it's not just that we turn this over to a student and say, hey, here's the prompt, type it in, you got it, go do your thing. But now we can sort of have this tool at our disposal for those conversations we're having with students, so we can be more informed on the very specific sort of nuanced pathways for the student, and be able to help guide those conversations. The other sort of piece here is that inside of Notebook LM, you've got all of these really, really powerful tools available at your disposal. You can do things like create a podcast that's downloadable and playable at wherever you play podcasts. It can build infographics and reports and quizzes and mind maps and flashcards. So I went ahead and I've built out a couple of podcasts. I'm not going to make you listen to all of them here. And I realized I may have not shared my screen properly with sounds. Let me redo that. I did. Okay. So I'll reshare that. So here's a quick deep dive for Avery. You're going to hear 2 AI podcasters. This takes a few minutes when you tell it to do an audio overview. It's going to pop up and ask you some details. You can tell it to be focused. Here, I asked it to focus the podcast as a deep dive to help Avery make a little more informed choice about her best fit post-secondary pathways. So I'll let you hear a little bit of that.
Welcome to today's Deep Dive. I'm your host, and today we are looking at something that honestly affects you directly.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm your resident policy expert, and I am so excited to dig into these state documents today.
Right, so normally high school feels like this, rigid assembly line. You just take the required classes, sit at a desk, and get the exact same diploma as everyone else.
Exactly. It's a system built on compliance, really, not on what you can actually do out in the real world.
But looking at your specific profile, you are already doing incredible creative work way outside the classroom. I mean, you've got that concert photography TikTok that's totally taking off,
Yeah.
and you're volunteering at a local arts nonprofit.
Right, and that is exactly why we're doing this deep dive. Our mission today is to take Indiana's new high school diploma requirements, the course catalogs, and the work-based learning menus, and synthesize them specifically for you.
Yeah, we
Skip
want
ahead a bit.
Schedule. And question 2, who at your arts nonprofit can serve as that official industry professional evaluator?
You definitely need to find that person. And question 3, which specific electives in the new catalog actually serve your goals?
Yeah, courses like the Digital Design Capstone or Principles of Entrepreneurship.
Which leads perfectly to your 3 next steps.
Yeah.
Step 1, you have to meet with your counselor to switch your current graduation pathways to these new flexible CTE options.
Step 2 is drafting that formal WBL partnership agreement for your nonprofit work. Get the paperwork rolling.
And step 3, register for those targeted courses we just mentioned. You have this amazing mix of empathy, graphic design, and leadership. The modern workforce desperately wants that.
We just need to get the state's paperwork to match your passion.
Exactly. And I want to leave you with this final thought to mull over. If you can turn your concert photography into official high school curriculum today, what other everyday hidden talents might the next generation of students turn into recognized career credentials tomorrow?
Okay, you get the idea, this idea that we can have these sort of targeted conversations and then leverage those constrained resources, the resources that are part of this collection in this notebook, to create podcasts. That particular one's actually interactive, meaning you can interrupt the podcast and inject new questions into it. And in nearly real time, the podcast hosts, the AI hosts, will adjust the podcast and respond to you. Really, really fascinating use case for this. I'm going to switch how I'm sharing one more time to close us out here, and then move us into some Q&A time. To just wrap up, I have the slide. I've got a link at the end for you, so you can have the slides and have a collection of resources. What you just saw in Notebook LM, I didn't go through the building out the notebook. I'd already done that for you. But basically, you just make a new notebook. To make the new notebook, you're literally just adding a collection of resources, and then you can ask for things like the prompt you saw me ask, a very simple prompt of asking for a roadmap to help a particular student identify viable pathways to create a personalized plan. And of course, that's a very much just a starting point. The world's your oyster there to be able to have these targeted conversations with collections of resources. And its capacity to like make slide decks on your behalf, just as a professional, beyond student use, is really, really powerful. So I'd encourage you, if you haven't played much with Notebook LM, or if you haven't played with it in a while, it continues to update. It has some incredible capabilities. The last piece I'll talk about before I share the link to the resources is kind of where we're going, where AI is headed. And I've mentioned it already. It's this idea of moving towards an agentic future. In 2026, in the AI landscape, this is certainly sort of the year of agentification. It's not clear how it's going to shake out exactly yet. I won't go through every little thing in this slide, but what I'll say is this. We are definitely in a transition with AI, and some of you may be feeling like I'm behind. What I'd encourage is, like, if you're behind, just start playing start grabbing, get an account with any one of the chatbots. Start with a free account. Jump into Notebook LM, pick one or two things, and start having conversations. Start tapping into its resource. But very quickly, for sure, in the next 6 to 9 months, we're going to see a seat change in how AI is implemented at an enterprise level, moving from just using chatbots to answer questions. I think that'll still be a significant part of the experience. But we're going to move increasingly toward using AI agents to actually complete work on our behalf. Some examples are included here of what that could look like. All I'm going to call out here is this idea. The big bold words here are different companies' versions of sort of agent interfaces, or they're starting to call them harnesses, that sort of lay over the top of. So, for example, Codex is a new way to interface with ChatGPT that sounds like it's all about code. The next one's from Claude Code from Anthropic, the same kind of idea. Sounds like it's about programming and coding. And that is what they were built for originally. But increasingly, they've become these sort of agentic harnesses where you can use Codex to actually accomplish tasks on your behalf at a very high level. And it can do a lot of tasks in parallel, meaning it can do multiple tasks at one time. So rather than having this dialogue with a ChatGPT or a Claude or a Gemini, hey, here's the thing I'm working on. Could you help me rewrite this email? And then I'm going to take it and edit it and send it. It can streamline that entire workflow. It can actually do that entire workflow. It can get the email drafted. It can use your computer essentially, so that you might let it send emails on your behalf. I'm not sure I'm ready to pull that trigger, but it could draft them and then they can be ready. And all you're doing is just clicking send after you reviewed and made edits. We're not going to go deep on this, but it feels irresponsible to be May, June 2026 and not talk about the sort of agent capabilities. And I'd encourage, there's a lot of moving pieces in these, but I'd encourage, if you haven't tapped into agents, but you've been using chatbots for a while, many of you responded in the chat with some pretty compelling use cases. Do a YouTube search, have a conversation with your chatbot of choice, ask about how you currently use AI. What are some ways you might start using Codex or Claude Code or OpenClaw? There's a number of sort of harnesses, these are agentic harnesses that are available. But start asking how you might use them to save time. And as you do, you can see along the bottom there, as you can save some time, sort of take some mundane, repeatable tasks and let AI agents sort of complete those for you or wrap, significantly expediting for you. It buys time to build deeper relationships, to improve outcomes, to create deeper human connection with those that we serve. I think that's really ultimately what it's about. I'll stop sharing my screen so we can get into Q&A and some back-end conversation here on the last little bit of the time together on the webinar. But I've put together some resources for you. There's some student profiles in there as well that are all just AI generated. These aren't real students, no real names, nothing like that. But you're welcome to use the bit.ly there or the QR code to go in. There's some prompts for college and career coaching or college and career, not just coaches, but coaching. There's a mock interview generator to help students as they're thinking about like work-based learning and preparing for mock interviews. There's some prompts in there that'll help them turn your chatbot into a mock interview so it'll sort of act like an interviewer. The voice capabilities on all of these models now are pretty extraordinary. I've been a computer person most of my career, but I find myself increasingly leaving my keyboard, not typing as much and talking back and forth to these like verbally. I find I'm more nuanced and detailed when I do that, and I spend less time wordsmithing. And AI still the bots are able to pick up sort of what I'm trying to lay down, regardless of the kind of rambling nature of the conversation. And then you can see, of course, the slides are there, and there's a pathway and prompt GPT generator. The GPT generator, if you don't use ChatGPT, could easily be used to create gems. There'd be a couple of minor modifications, but you could easily use that in other like gems in Google and Gemini or in other platforms if you prefer a different flavor of chatbot. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing there so I can see the Q&A. And yeah, Nathan, thank you. If you have any questions, welcome to post them in the Q&A. I'm not sure if I can see those. So, there we go. Yeah, so happy to get into whatever might be helpful for the group. Yes, the slides are also available in that resource folder. If you go to bit.ly/INYouthAI, all of the slides will be there. I'll try to share that so it's actually a link.
Michael did have one question pop up here that comes back to the first question of how we're currently using AI to support students. What safeguards should organizations put in place before using AI with youth data or student advising?
Oh yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Yeah, I think personal information is really, obviously it's really important that we be mindful of that. I'll answer it a couple of ways. There's sort of terms and conditions, what legally is available in the different chatbots or things like Notebook LM. For example, Notebook LM tells you, and they kind of go out of their way to tell you your chats are private, they're secure, they're contained to that notebook, that they're not training their data off of your conversations. So when you're using Notebook LM, it will remind you in multiple instances that the chat history is entirely private to you, the user, unless you have shared that notebook with someone intentionally. But you have to make a conscious choice to do that. That's not something that's just baked in. However, so there's sort of the terms and conditions piece. Basically, all of the major LLM platforms have versions of that in their terms and conditions in terms of how they handle your data. It's generally encrypted. It's generally secure. All of that being said, we work with a number of school districts. And of course, this needs to be something that you use with a lot of caution. So my recommendation is to scrub personal identifiable information as much as possible, particularly for minors. to encourage them to do so. Change their name, don't include their name, remove things, potentially even like their high school name, unless it's prestigious and would add maybe unlock a pathway or something like that, which is probably unlikely to be valuable. So as much as they can sort of de-identify information that's going in, that's not a bad thing. In this case, for a demo, I was using made-up information, so happy to use their names. It just makes it track easier. But in reality, I would exercise caution. And if you're not sure, right, it's probably better to be more careful than less careful in terms of putting stuff, student information. And however, like I said, the sort of official answer on that is any of those resources you're putting into a notebook and Notebook LM, for example, certainly the chat history is private information. I will say I'm not confident enough in some of that. I'm certainly not putting like my social security number or bank information into Chat GPT or any other chat bot. And I would appreciate if I have 4 daughters in our local public school system. I'd be very happy if their teachers were not putting their transcript with their personal information in it. So wherever it's possible to scrub, that's usually a best practice for sure when working with minors.
Hey, Michael, can you talk about how we can use AI for students to connect with local workforce opportunities?
Sure. So essentially, we want to provide as much sort of constraint on the front end. So just identifying what community you're in and what interests there are is a starting point. And then the tricky part in all of this is always identifying or having access to digital resources that point to local opportunity, right? So the AI can't search for things that aren't available, right? It can't find things that aren't available. So if your local chamber of commerce has a job posting board or connection to internships or pre-apprenticeships or apprenticeships options, or if your school district provides those, or if you have an agency in town that has those, that's digitized, that's if that's a PDF, if it's a website, but in some way it's available in digital format. Just literally linking that in your conversation, saying I've got a student that's particularly interested in mechanical systems and has some experience working in has gone through a couple of CTE courses in an HVAC pathway. What pre-apprenticeships or apprenticeship options are available within a 90-mile radius of, or a 50-mile radius, or 30-mile radius, whatever, of your community or a particular zip code. It's going to be able to search and help find those, and sort of similar to what a search engine would do. It's only going to be able to find the things that are, like I said, that are available, but different from a search engine. A search engine is going to look based on the exact text you provided, where it's going to, AI engines are going to be a little more creative. So they're going to recognize, like, you don't just have to look for HVAC pre-apprenticeships or apprenticeship pathways for that student. You can sort of think outside of the box, go, what non-traditional or not directly connected work-based learning experiences or sort of apprenticeship experiences might be available that could still be valuable to that student, but that may live outside of a sort of rigid structure, rigid pathway. I hope that makes sense, Nate. I hope that kind of gets in that lane.
Yeah, definitely. To focus on those restraints and asking the right questions, putting them in with local resources definitely hits. We think we have time for one more question. And so what would be the practical first steps for schools, for educators, for out of school time, if they were going to use AI for career exploration with limited resources? What would be the starting point?
I think it's really difficult to introduce students to tools that you don't feel comfortable with as an adult. I don't think you have to be an expert, but I do think there has to be sort of this demystification of it, right? Like there has to be this sort of base level comfortability. So I think the starting point is really just starting to think of what is one current workflow you have. Excuse me. What's a current workflow you have that is that you don't that you're not using AI in at all, right? So what's a thing you do professionally that AI is not currently a part of in any way? And literally, the very first thing I would do is go to a chatbot and just simply ask, how could I use AI to help me in this workflow? Ask me questions about what exactly I do. to better understand what I currently do, and then give me suggestions on how I could use, whether you're in ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, how could I use AI to enhance what I'm doing? Whatever it says, try that for a week. Be intentional, saying this one facet of my work. It might just be how you start your morning routine. It might be how you navigate your to-do list. One facet of your work. Have AI start to coach you through how you can use AI in that specific domain. Build some comfortability if you're sort of new to the field. Build some comfortability with it, and then I think the next step is to then say, okay, now here's what I do with students. This is sort of professionally what I'm doing, how I'm interacting with young people. What's a good first step for me? That's going to be nuanced. The first step is going to be dependent on what exactly your role is. If you're a college and career counselor for a high school, right, your first step is probably going to be starting to ingest, upload. How do I scrub student personal identifiable information and then upload student information into a chatbot or a notebook that I could use with students as a coaching aid, right? But it's going to be a little dependent on individually, where would you like assistance? Where does assistance make sense for you? So that's where I think the sort of broad point is that we tend to see very generalized conversations with AI, and they're helpful, but not altogether actionable. There's a takeaway. The takeaway on this is the more specific we can be, we tend to work in very detailed, nuanced, specific roles. So the more specific we can be in our conversations, the more actionable the feedback becomes, the responses become from our experiences with AI.
Thank you, Michael. And as a reminder, a copy of the presentation's PowerPoint will be sent out to all participants. And IYI has a few upcoming events that we would like to share with everyone. Here. This September, we are very excited to be bringing back our College and Career Regional Conferences. They will be September 1st in South Bend at the Century Center, September 2nd at the Indy Marriott North, and September 3rd at the Evansville Old National Events Plaza. Registration is not yet ready to be opened up, but it should be opened up in the very near future. I want to make sure you guys are all getting those dates on your calendar. You can always receive the latest updates and opportunities by signing up to our newsletter at IYI.org/newsletters. And as we conclude, I want to thank all the attendees who joined us today. We appreciate you and your time and your impact and your voice as we partner and as we continue to partner with IYI. Later today, you will receive an email with a link to the evaluation of the webinar. Please take a few minutes to let us know what you thought about today's presentation. If you don't receive the evaluation in your email, please check your junk email, as it may have been redirected there. I want to thank Michael Stone again for his expertise, some really great ideas, really kind of making us think differently and flipping it on our head about how we're using AI as a tool for our youth, for those career pathways and STEM pathways. So thank you to Michael, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. We really appreciate the work that you do.